Thank you, Professor Rao and the Student Union for inviting me. I'm indeed very honored that my book is going to be discussed. I've worked very hard at it, and I worked not to try and topple or defeat or offend any opponent, but to wake up our own Sanskrit scholars who now have to take this up and do a better job than I can and take it further than I can. So the book is framed as a discussion between insiders and outsiders of our tradition. It raises some issues about the outsiders, their interpretations, and gives the insider response. But the purpose of this book is really to wake up the insiders from their silos and isolation and give responses to the outsiders. So my part of the contribution is to put the light on some red flags concerning the outsiders' interpretations, and then request more insiders to join in this exercise. So each chapter of the book is an analysis, a Purva Paksh and Uttar Paksh of what is going on in the world of Indology. A lot of people have asked me, why does it matter to us? It matters to us because we are so colonized that whether we know it consciously or not, much of what we think about ourselves, our own heritage, our own Sanskrit and our own Sanskriti, actually it's been interpreted elsewhere and taught to us. So we've downloaded these apps into our brain, and that's how we are running. For instance, the whole Aryan invasion theory never existed till 1800. There was no concept of a Dravidian people and Aryan people until the 1800s, early mid-1800s. And then, one person, Max Miller starts the Aryan invasion theory, and Robert Caldwell the Dravidian theory, and now 150 years later, this is part of our life. So it does matter. You can say something similar about the caste system. Lord Risley's role in defining what is today's version of the caste system. Before that, we had something called Jati and Varna, which was not exactly the same thing. So we know these things do matter. And I could go on with a number of examples of things taken for granted. Our history, our chronology, many things are not as per our tradition, but as reinterpreted by the Western Orientalists and Indologists. So it does matter. And in this book, as my prototype, I've picked the individuals who are considered to be the most powerful, most influential Indologists today, having the maximum influence in India. So do not think that I'm criticizing people that, influence Westerners. Most Americans have never heard of these people. Most Americans haven't. But most of the American academic scholars never heard of these people. Their entire reputation, power, clout is because people in India bend over backwards, go running around adopting what they have written, give them Padam Shri, Padam Bhushan, millions of dollars of grants, appoint them here and there as the experts. So they have become the experts on Indian civilization as per Indians. You won't find such similar status given to some American concerning Chinese civilization as per the Chinese themselves. You won't find Japanese adopting some American and saying that is the final word on Japanese civilization. Or the Arabs saying that this particular fellow at Harvard knows the ultimate about Islamic studies or Arab studies. You won't find that. Indian civilization is the only among the major ones where the insiders are bending over backward and very grateful to and very obliged that some outsider is studying us and telling us what we didn't ourselves know. So this is the inferiority complex problem that we have. Hence, deconstructing what they have done, giving an answer to it becomes very important. And it's not some guy sitting in America, diaspora, and he has a problem with some people there. It's nothing to do with that. It's me concerned that people in India just aren't able to give a response. This kind of work that I'm critiquing has been going on for at least 3 decades, and nobody has given a systematic response. So Sheldon Pollock, who is the main person I'm evaluating in this book, whose work, I consider him very learned, very intellectual, very smart, And there's nothing personal about him. It's just that I question many of the basic assumptions he makes. I will come to that in a moment. And when I told him that what bothers me is that nobody has done a critical analysis of his work, he says, I've never stopped them. And he's right. He hasn't stopped anyone, but people just never bothered to do it. So that's the background, that's the situation in which I arrived. The book has lots of material stuff in it, and I've given several talks, and I'll put up all the YouTubes. If you write down your email ID, I hope there's a sign-up sheet here for email IDs. Then I will put you in a list and send you links to various lectures I've given. I'm giving 23 lectures in India with some commonalities, but also each one is different. And that way you'll be able to see what was mentioned in all of them. And that's how I'm covering the scope of this entire book, one part at a time. The point I want to, each time I pick up one point and emphasize, so this being a center also for computer science, computational linguistics, sciences, and so on, I want to pick up a particular point that I've critiqued about what the Western Indologists have written. And that point is, according to them, Sanskrit, why did Sanskrit become important? They quickly rule out any army, military invasion like Romans, going around South Asia, Southeast Asia. That didn't happen. It was voluntarily accepted, but why was it voluntarily accepted? The theory is that it was the most powerful, most important language, most useful language for asserting the king's power. It was the power of the king that had to be expressed, and this was done better in Sanskrit than any other language because of kavya. Kavya is, according to them, primarily a political genre, and this could best be done in Sanskrit, and therefore kings found it useful to maintain their power and spread their power to adopt this and adopt the various literature and texts because it made the king look powerful, and hence they sponsored the Brahmins to develop this kavya, spread this kavya because it would make the king look powerful. So basically the whole theory of the spread of Sanskrit into what they call the Sanskrit cosmopolis, which is a huge area, for over 1,000 years was a quest for power. It was power-hungry kings that patronized the spread of Sanskrit. And anything to do with spirituality and those sort of things are totally excluded from the reason why Sanskrit became important. Now, why was Sanskrit suitable for the spread of power? So here there is a new word coined by the Indologists that I'm critiquing, and this word is literarization. That's called an extra ra. It's not literization. A literized language means literary. You are able to read and write. You can write English literary, and there are people who are literate. But this is not literizing. This is literarizing. An extra ra. Literarizing. So the language becomes literarized when it is infused with certain structures, certain construct that lend themselves for power. So to give you an example, suppose somebody says English is particularly suitable for medicine because it is infused with a lot of medical vocabulary, a lot of medical theories are already part of the language. And so when one medical scientist or doctor uses English, it's very easy to communicate. But another language, some obscure language does not have those structures that are medically important, and so it is not as suitable. That's the kind of analogy. Or if you're a software guy, then if you say that a certain language has a lot of macros in it, then it's suitable for development people, for software developers, because they can use that. Or if you are somebody using a smartphone, you can say a particular platform has more apps. It's not just a platform that is important, but it has more apps. So I can do more things with it. So the Sanskrit, according to them, was infused with power structures. And these power structures were oppression of lower caste by upper caste, that was for power, and women by men, and outsiders like Muslims. When they later came, it became very useful to use Sanskrit and Ramayana because it had structures for projecting hostility towards outsiders. So these kind of mechanisms were very useful because they became part of the Sanskrit language, and therefore the Sanskrit was a useful weapon for political expansion. So Sanskrit was literarized because it had certain constructs in the grammar that were asymmetric, that were oppressive, that were something dominating something else. It had philosophy, Vedic philosophy, which had some of these ideas built into it, which are political, which have to do with elites oppressing non-elites, and various text, itihasas, Ramayana, Mahabharata, and so on. And so the aesthetics of this language are so beautiful. In such a lot of beauty, it's able to hide that it's really exerting power over you. So there's a certain aesthetic way of the elite becoming powerful without other people thinking that this is happening. So they're sort of duped into it. And this quality of Sanskrit is what made it powerful. So this theory I critique on two grounds. Firstly, I say that Sanskrit also was infused with many other qualities. It has the sacredness, it has mathematical precision, which made it important, for linguistics, which made it very important. It had mantra, which a lot of people considered important. It has so many different kinds of shastras, from Jyotish Shastra to all sorts of things that people considered important. And the structures of Sanskrit made it, and Sanskriti, all these sort of Sanskriti ideas and Sanskrit itself were so intertwined that there were multiple reasons for Sanskrit to spread. Maybe politics was one of several reasons, but it cannot be considered the one reason only or the dominant reason for Sanskrit to spread. So that's the kind of counter argument I give. I also point out that now we have the English language elite in India. There's not the Sanskrit language elite in India. And this, of course, people don't like to hear, particularly in the social sciences. And therefore, what I've said is that now it is English language, Americanized, which has been infused with certain structures of minorityism, casteism, infused with ideas of breaking India projects, divisiveness, infused with self-hate. So the and the mimicry of the whiteness, the mimicry of the Americans. So today, if you were to take the argument given by Pollock about Sanskrit and its power and how it helped perpetuate an elite, one would take the exact same arguments and apply it to English language and say there is the English elite. They are the ones who go to literary festivals and get awards, and they are the ones who are celebrated as very powerful people on mainstream English media. They are the ones who are the IAS people, IFS people. They are the ones who are writing NCRT books, government policies. So it's the English-speaking elite infused with power structures imported from the West, various ideologies imported from the West, which has created the buzz, the vernacular, which has created the language structure of English. So it is not only English purely for ordering a cup of chai or ordinary mundane talk. It is English loaded with these assumptions, loaded with this kind of ideological vocabulary, loaded with all this kind of history, and all these constructs. So when you are learning English and you study English honors, it's not just learning it as a language. You're being taught how to use these structures. You're being taught literary theory. You're being taught a kind of ideological lens, a drishti, to look at the world around you, to look at text and look at the world around you. So my critique is not that they are wrong. I'm saying that first of all, I'm saying that this business of literarization of Sanskrit was not only for should not be appreciated only for its political applications, but many other kinds of things for which Sanskrit was very good. And second point, I think, is what upsets people more, because I tell them that the exact same theory can be applied in the reverse direction. What you have are, the Sheldon Pollocks of the world are spreading the power of a certain kind of elite. They are writing prashastis for their sponsors, and the sponsors are doling out millions of dollars. So there's a certain kind of image and aura and aesthetics of this English-speaking cosmopolis, you might say American English cosmopolis, is spreading into India, and we are all sort of elite part of it. I'm part of it too, and I have no problem acknowledging that. So this is one of the important points that I bring out in this book. I also bring out issues of chronology, which I hope the other speakers will raise, will address, Professor Rao and Konrad Elst. I raise questions about whether the claim is correct the other party is making, that the Buddhist tradition was anti-Vedic. I question that, and whether the claim is valid that it is Buddhists who transformed Sanskrit into a language that could be used for pragmatic purposes, and introduce writing, and allowed Indians to become progress-oriented, because before that, allegedly, Indians did not have progress. And I also question the decoupling of Kavya from Vedas. That is Dev Priya's specialty. So I hope Dev Priya will say something on that, because a very, very strong claim is being made that Kavya is sort of a secular thing for political goals. That's a very strong statement, but it's being made over and over again. And the whole enterprise of Sanskrit and Sanskriti and Sanskrit texts has survived and thrived because it is very good for social oppression. So it's kind of, using my terms, it's like a weapon of mass destruction. Sanskrit and Sanskriti are a weapon of WMD, intellectual WMD. So it's easy to sell this to another king in Cambodia or Thailand or wherever, because you could say this is a WMD. If you buy this and adopt it in your kingdom, you can become very powerful. So it's all about power, hunger, oppression of other people that has made this successful. The lens being used by Western Indology, they are calling it political philology. It's not just philology. Philology is okay. Everybody does philology, which is a study of texts. But political philology, they say, is looking for political motives in the text. What is the political motive in the Ramayana? What is the political motive in a Veda mantra? Who is being oppressed by whom? What is the political motive of Mahabharata? So it's all postmodernism projected back to interpret, political oppression and exploitation and so on. It's part of this breaking up of everybody's grand narrative. It's part of that. It's part of that project. So the political philology is the device being used for analysis and understanding, reinterpreting. And then there is another device that goes with it called liberation philology, which is then to make interventions to cure the problems, in human rights interventions to cure the problems of an abusive society. So that's what Sanskrit studies, Sanskriti, have turned into. Now, when they say revival, our people are so happy because they say, but so-and-so was saying we revive it. So then I quote them, okay, but their idea of revival, they've said, is to look for such oppression. It's a revival by scholars to study it in a new way than it was studied in the past. Revive it so you can look for such oppressive elements in it, and then you can remove those elements in order to liberate the Indian people from their own baggage, from their own Sanskriti. So it's almost like saying Sanskrit has to be decoupled and deprogrammed and kind of relieved of Sanskriti. You have to take the civilizational, the cultural, the philosophical aspects out of it, kind of secularize it, and then it's safe for consumption. So that's in a nutshell what I'm writing about. I would love to now hear other comments, and then we'll throw it open for question and answers. Thank you very much.